She's fine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Tia. Not quite the Boston Symphony there, but we'll work on it. Good evening, everybody. This is required by the governor's emergency order regarding meetings on Zoom. It's a bit wordy. I wish I could just go like this and say, read this, but unfortunately, per the law, I need to read it. So this meeting is Tuesday, May 5th, 6:15. This is the COVID-19 public meeting procedure notice. Due to the coronavirus crisis, in accordance with Governor Sununu's order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the Henniker Board of Selectmen is authorized to meet electronically. The Town of Henniker will be utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to Governor Sununu's Order Number 12 and his Executive Order 2020-04. All members of the Board of Selectmen have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to listen to and, if necessary, participate in this meeting following the link below or dialing the number below and entering the ID number at the prompt. For those that are at home and you wish to find this address, you can go to henniker.org on the face page, on the front home page, and that's where you'll get it. For those who want to provide public testimony in the public hearing portion of the meeting, you're connected to the Zoom website. You may click on or use the raise hand icon in the attendees section of the Zoom to make this request. When the time is appropriate, you'll be recognized so you can provide your testimony. For those calling in and want to provide public testimony, dial *9 to alert the host that you wish to speak. The host will unmute you at the appropriate time during the hearing portion of the meeting. All participants, please keep your phones and computers on mute unless speaking. Members of the public can also email questions or other public testimonies to townadministrator@henniker.org or by calling his cell phone at 603-998-1492. Like I said, if you've missed any part of this, it's all on the homepage at henniker.org. Okay, fairly winded right there. So let's jump right into the agenda. At this point in time, it is time for public comment number 1. If there's any members of the audience that wish to address the board on any issues that are not currently on the agenda, please keep your comments brief and to the point, and we will scan the Zoom wall here for anybody that wishes to speak. Anybody for public commentary? Joe, are you seeing anything in the text box or anything?
I am not seeing anything right now.
Okay. If the board is good, we will go into the approval for the consent agenda items. Is there a motion?
Oh, Caleb Dobbins would like to address public comment. I'm going to be unmuting him.
And please, please, for the record, make sure you state your name for Kelly, the secretary.
Great, thanks. I'm Caleb Dobbins, 137 Hall Ave. Although this is on your agenda, but I don't think it's a public hearing, it's relative to the Sidewalk Cafe. I'm just questioning how you folks are going to struggle given the governor's 2.0 that tables need to be 6 feet away, aisles, you know, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to fit it. I totally understand businesses wanting to get as many tables as possible, but given the sidewalks, given the amount of traffic that's out there now, given the width of them, and given the fact that the public still needs to use them, I think you're going to struggle with being able to do anything relative to actually having tables on a sidewalk unless you close the sidewalk and force the pedestrians into the street, which is kind of contrary to everything we've done here in town in terms of trying to make us a walking community. So that's all I just wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll be in the thought process as we unveil some initiatives there. A bit of a housekeeping note that we would like you to do. If you could put your full name on the Zoom screen. Right now we have some nicknames and just some first names, and that was a bit of housekeeping that would be very helpful if you could all change your names to your full name.
Yeah, and to do that, you're gonna hover over your screen name under participants. And if that's not showing for you, if you scroll down, participants should pop up and a sidebar will appear. Hover over your name and click more. And you should then see a drop down that says rename.
Great. Thank you, Tia. As always, awesome on technical support. With that said, we had a motion for the consent agenda. I don't know if it got, before we segued back over to public commentary, did it get seconded? Did anybody even actually make a motion?
I don't think anybody made a motion, but I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion.
Tia makes a motion.
Seconded.
Seconded by Leon. We'll do a roll call vote. I will go first. Then we will go to Tia. Then we will go in reverse order of last time, Peter Flynn,
Yes.
Leon, and then Scott. So yes on the consent agenda.
Tia Hooper, yes.
And the dog, yes.
And the dog, yes.
That's not my dog.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Okay, I believe we go Scott, then Leon.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Consent agenda
Switch
passes.
this, Leon.
Okay, we'll move right along into item number 13, which is a discussion on the financial update from our fearless finance director, Russ Roy. Russ, the floor is yours. Or Joe, did you want to do an introduction?
Well, Russ can go right at it. I just wanted to say if we could, Mr. Chairman, when we do a roll call vote, if everybody could state their name, so it'd be like Chris
Right.
Wambach, yes, Tia Hooper, yes, just for the minutes, so we have a clear knowing of who is saying yes and no on
Yeah.
the roll call, please.
Got it.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if we can have Cordell go up first regarding town meeting, because that might help us in the discussion on the financial update.
Sure. Cordell, are you prepared to speak? Or Russ, do you mind if we go to Cordell first?
No problem at all.
Okay, Cordell, are you prepared to speak at this moment?
Of course.
There you go. The floor is yours, sir.
So you can hear me, right?
We can hear you.
All right. Well, when last we spoke, we decided to postpone the town meeting as we had to, and we postponed it until May 9th. As everyone knows by now, I think the governor has extended the prohibition on.
You're fading, Cordell.
I'll talk louder. I don't know what else to do. Does that work?
A little better.
Okay. The governor extended the prohibition on gatherings of 10 persons or more to May 31. So we cannot have a town meeting before May 31. So I guess one thing we have to, we have to make a decision to postpone the meeting until a day after May 31. In thinking about that, I think you probably are all aware that the Municipal Association has made a request to the governor for an emergency order that would allow towns that have had to postpone their meetings and are facing the prospect of not having one for some time to adopt what essentially is the default budget based on last year's budget. And that's something that that the board may want to consider. If we have to postpone it until, say, June, whatever, and then we have to postpone it again at some point. And I know right now you're operating under the law that allows you to make reasonable expenditures based on prior year's budgets. But I think it would be nice to have an actual budget, given that we're already more than 4 months into the year. So I submit that for your consideration, but I guess the immediate thing that requires action is to agree to postpone the meeting again. And if anyone has any questions about that or about the proposal that has been put forward to the governor, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, Cordell, where do you know where the governor might be on the potential executive order? I know we've been waiting for some time now on getting a ruling on that.
Yeah, we had asked him for that back in, I think it was in late March.
Yep.
And the word we got from his office at the time was, it's premature. We don't know how this is going to play out. We don't know whether we're going to have this state of emergency for 3 weeks or 6 months, and we don't want to rush into anything. That, as I said, that was, I think, late March. Obviously, the situation has played out as it has, and so we resubmitted the request on Wednesday of last week. We did get the Attorney General's office called us with some clarifying questions immediately after we sent the letter in. So it does appear that they are at least paying attention to the request. And I can't guarantee anything, but my sense is that the governor is sympathetic to the situation. There are 12 meetings and a number of school districts, 12 towns rather, and a number of school districts and village districts have had to postpone their meetings. They all need to adopt a budget somehow. And I'm not at all confident that the situation is going to be any better in early June than it is now. So I'm, as I said, I can't guarantee anything, but I am fairly optimistic that he will do something that grants something along the lines of what we have requested fairly soon. But all I can do is say that's what I think will happen.
And Cordell, can you just give an overview of what that memo contained that went over to the governor's office from the New Hampshire Municipal Association, outlining what a default budget, what that could look like for the town of Henniker?
Yeah, I'll just read you this paragraph. It's not all that long. It's kind of long. It's not much longer than what Chris read at the beginning of the meeting, though. So, at the option of the governing body, that's the Board of Selectmen, a budget could be adopted, which would be the same as the budget that was approved for the prior year, excluding any appropriations funded by bonds or notes that were approved last year, but including this year's debt service associated with those bonds or notes. I don't think we had any bonds or notes last year.
Not
We
that
did
I
not
recall.
in 19. Yep.
You say we did not?
We did not in 2019.
Okay, so it would just be the budget approved for the prior year, which includes appropriations funded in last year's operating budget article and all special or separate articles approved by the legislative body other than bond articles. And the governing body may exercise existing transfer authority to adjust last year's line items to meet current budgetary needs. So it's, as I said, it really is, it's basically last year's budget, and you would have, including all of the separate warrant articles, and you would have the authority to transfer funds from one line item to another as you currently do.
Thank you.
The other thing I guess I should say is a lot of towns are towns that had their meetings and adopted budgets are now thinking, we don't really want to spend this much money because we're worried about getting our tax revenue, and we're worried about people being able to afford the tax rate. And so some towns are looking for ways that they can reduce their appropriations, because the tax rate is not based on how much money you spend, it's based on how much money you appropriate. So just saying we're going to spend less doesn't get you there. So there may be a further request to allow towns to have some kind of shortened process or simple process to reduce their appropriations once they've already been adopted. Currently, the only way to do that is to hold a special town meeting, which is a pretty involved procedure.
Now, would that also, if that provision were approved, could the school board also utilize that to reduce their appropriation if necessary?
Well, and nothing formal has been proposed on that, but that certainly would be the idea. Would be that any town, school district, or village district could use that process to reduce its appropriations.
Thank you.
There was another alternative too. They had Margaret mentioned, but by voting in public.
Yeah, I can tell you about that if you want.
It seemed very complicated.
Yeah, and well, it's up to you, but I'm not a big fan of this idea. This is the process that the BOS school district used last week, I think it was, and they did that. They just did it. There was no order from the governor saying you can do this, and I guess they took their chances. So what they did is they had a meeting of the governing body, and keep in mind this is a school district, so the meeting of the school board, a virtual meeting like this one, where they took the warrant for the meeting, they went through the articles, they discussed them, and then solicited comments from the voters after the meeting.
By mail?
What's that?
By mail?
By mail, by email, by telephone, text, or whatever they wanted to do. And then they had the school board had a second meeting where they considered all of those comments, and the school board voted on amending the warrant articles. And the articles as amended then were put onto a printed ballot. And the ballot was made available to all voters on the website. They could print it, and then they could bring it on a Saturday, and they had a drive-through voting process where you drive up, you show your driver's license or other ID to the ballot clerks, they check you in, you mark your ballot, and then you drive forward and you put it in a ballot box. My understanding is it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I heard that they got a huge turnout, like triple what they usually get.
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
But it's a very complicated process. I think it might work a little easier for a school district. They have, 4 or 5 warrant articles, as opposed to a town where we have, I think, something like 35 on our warrant. But that is another option that we put forward in that proposal to the governor, because there were some towns and school districts that wanted to use that process.
Looks like an incredible amount of work for the staff, though, to do that. Putting out all the mailings twice.
I think it's a lot of work, but it's a possibility. Some people like it.
Yep. Thanks.
So there's nothing for you to decide about that right now, because these are only proposals at this point. The only thing that needs to be decided is we're going to postpone the meeting, and I guess my proposal would be the first Saturday in June, which is the 6th, I think.
6th.
So are you hanging your hat, Cordell, on the governor coming up with some special fix that we could do it? Because even if we get past May 30th, we'll probably still only be in phase 1, which is still less than 10 people. The next phase is 2 at 50 people.
Right. No, I'm not hanging my hat on anything. I mean, if we get to May 31 and we're still not allowed to have a meeting of 50 or more people, let alone 10 or more people, then the governor has to do something. I mean, there's no reason for him not to. I mean, he understands that towns have to adopt a budget, and the only reason not to act would be for some kind of political advantage, and I don't see any political advantage to not allowing this to happen. So, and you know, I try not to get into politics in these discussions, but there really is no upside to not granting some kind of relief to these towns. So I'm optimistic that something will happen, but as I say, I can't be 100% sure of that.
So in order to avoid rescheduling this thing for whatever it's going to be, the 3rd or 4th time, should we push that date till later in June as possible?
We could do that. I mean, I guess you have to consider every possible scenario. One scenario is, you know, we postpone it until, say, June 30th, and then come May 31, the governor says, the state of emergency is over. You can have meetings whatever size you want. So we could have had a meeting in early June, but now he's postponed until the end of June, and we're stuck there. And then he says, oh, by the way, I'm not going to let you have this alternative for adopting a budget. So you have to go until the end of June before you adopt a budget.
And what was the legal notification we needed for time?
Yeah,
Well-
do we need to have another public hearing?
No, you wouldn't. No,
He
you wouldn't
Okay.
have
He
another
waived
public
that.
hearing because under the order that one of the orders that he issued a while ago, you don't have to have any new public hearings
Okay.
in advance of the town meeting.
Okay, and what was the official notification for town meeting? 2 weeks?
Oh, no, it can be postponed to any time. The 2-week thing, that applies if you're postponing the election part of the meeting. But for the business session, the requirement is simply that it be postponed to a specific date, time, and place.
Right, but how about for notice of the meeting?
Well, the notice of the meeting is the warrant that was posted back in the beginning of March or the end of February. So that's still good.
Oh, okay.
What we're relying on for the notice of the meeting is the warrant that was posted 2 weeks before the original date, and then the continued postponements that are published on the website and posted in, I assume, in town hall and other places.
Got it.
So that's all the notice that is required.
Cordell, should we postpone to like the 2nd week in June, just in case the governor does come back and says, you know, nothing's changed, we can't move forward, so we can meet beforehand in case we need to do something about it?
That's fine. I don't have any particular opinion on what date it should be postponed to. I just I think we all like the idea of a Saturday, or at least
I would
like the idea of a Saturday.
I would like to suggest that we use the 6th. I think there probably aren't too many things that won't fit under the change in the default budget and that kind of thing, but we got a couple that I don't think fit that pattern. The one I would use as an example is the amount of money required for the water main fix. And that's one of those infrastructure things that's currently broken and needs to be repaired. And if we need to have a vote at a town meeting to approve that, then that would push me to say, let's schedule a town meeting for as early as we can, and we'll just look forward to, if necessary, moving it again.
Yeah, as I say, I don't really have an opinion. We could do, I mean, if we're gonna do it on a Saturday, it would be the 6th, the 13th, the 20th, or the 27th. June 6th works for me.
Well, since everybody's at home, do we still need to do it on a Saturday?
Well, some of us are still working.
Yeah,
In order to have
True.
it, that rule's gonna be changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna have the meeting, we won't all be at home.
All right, so what do you have two motions that you need us to make? You need us to officially cancel this Saturday's meeting, even though we've already canceled it per the governor's
So,
order?
we
And
need
then
to
you need a
post-
second one for the proposed
Actually-
meeting?
It's
You
up
need
to
to
the
postpone
moderator
it.
to decide.
Yeah, you need to postpone the meeting, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, well, actually, technically, I don't need any action from the board because the law simply says that the moderator may postpone after consultation with the governing body and the town clerk. So I am going to have to call Kim. But I am guessing that she'll be okay with whatever you say. So it doesn't require any formal action by the board. It seems like there's a consensus that postponing to June 6th will be okay.
okay with me.
Okay, if that's the case, then I'll just draft a notice of postponement for Joe to post tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Cordell, anything else?
That's all I have, I think.
All righty. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Yeah, so in anticipation of potentially what the governor might do, I did ask Russ to pull a bunch of information, which is in your packet, to help with the financial discussion.
And just last thing I'll say is obviously if we just release from the governor, I'd be happy to come back and talk to you about any questions you may have about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cordell.
Thanks, Cordell.
Thank you, Cordell. All right, next up is Mr. Russ Roy. Come on down.
Okay,
Item
Well,
13 on your agenda.
I'm sorry?
Just saying to the audience, item 13 on the agenda.
Oh, thank you. As you can see in the packet, I did several reports, an attempt to give you an idea of where we are on expenses without having an operating budget. As Cordell mentioned, we are spending what is absolutely necessary. So that side of it is handled by itself because the department heads are spending that money very carefully at this point in time with those orders in mind. The real question as to what is happening out there would be the revenues. We had January, February, and March and April, certainly March and April being your heaviest stay-at-home order time. And looking at the cash flow, and the revenue statement will give you all of the items that have been collected by myself and Kim. But I believe Kim's budget is, Kim's revenue stream is the one that is of most importance because she's collecting the property taxes and the motor vehicle revenues. We are generating, we've generated January through April from just the receivables on the taxes, $432,000. Last year at this time, we had $735,000 that we had taken in. So from a cash flow perspective, there's still $303,000 of money that we don't have available to us. And that does vary year by year, because that money that we're collecting in the first quarter is either outstanding liens or typically would be the 2019 cleanup of taxes that were outstanding at the end of the year. The interesting thing that I found in looking at the revenues, motor vehicle at this point is only down 7% year to date. And I can tell you on the day that I closed the month, because it was a Thursday, but Debbie was in the office still processing registrations. There was still 2 boxes of mail, and not complete boxes, but we put our mail in the boxes now to allow it to age a few days before we get to it. There was still a couple of stacks of motor vehicle registrations in there that were waiting to be aged out to process. That I honestly believe that 21,000 shortage on motor vehicle would be cut down to about half in the 10 area. So motor vehicle continues to be providing cash flow, and people are finding a way to get in touch with us and get their vehicles done. When you get over to the revenues on my side, and let me back up a bit, on Kim's side, the rest of what we have collected has pretty much been, the boat revenue is pretty much a couple of $100 short. For some reason, people have not registered their dogs yet, which is typically a big thing that happens in April. We're down roughly 50% of what we normally have collected, but I know that once this thing lets go, that people will be back getting that side of their things done. When you get into the revenues that flow through my office, specifically rescue revenue,
Russ, for the audience, what page are you on right now?
Well, I just jumped into the report, the 2020 revenues on page 15 is what in the packet.
15. Okay, thank you.
So, and on page 15, we are looking at our 2020 revenues through April 30th. When you look at what has come in through my office, we ended up with two chunks of highway block money. So we've got $71,000, which I do believe would be available for expenditure, since we have it in hand, so that is money that can be spent. Looking at the revenue side, rescue billing, in actual cash collections for the first 4 months, we got $104,000, helping to keep us afloat on the cash flow side. We also went to our partner, Franklin Savings, and obtained a tax anticipation note. We had that in place prior to this hitting, so we were able to take advantage of that cash flow, and we did advance $750,000 on that line. We typically would advance $1.5 million on that line prior to the collection, and then pay that 1.5 back in July. Take anything we have of excess and put it into some type of interest-bearing account, which thanks to the economy right now, that isn't really necessary, because the rates have pretty much all gone down to negligible numbers. The tax anticipation note, I think, will help us get through the first half billing. I am hopeful that the revenues will come in. We typically collect about $1.6 million direct from escrow companies, and that usually comes right in on the due date. And then Eversource, the college, and the telephone company are all big contributors, which I'm hoping to see their monies come in as well. That wouldn't get us all the way to where we need to be, but it would keep us afloat until we have a budget, and then we can plan on how we're going to proceed from there.
So Russ, on the state, the revenue that we usually have incoming from the state, are you hearing anything on, through your listservs or anything like that on what might be anticipated? I know the state's undergoing a revenue shortfall. Should we lower expectations on receiving that revenue this year?
I do think that the rooms and meals will certainly take a hit. To what level, I couldn't even begin. That's typically a couple $100,000 revenue for us. The other big revenue, and big is relative, is our flood control money, which usually comes in around $90,000. My understanding is that money is money being passed on coming from the other states. So I'm hoping that 90 comes in, which would leave only the rooms and meals on the table. So I know the state is spending a lot of money out there, and they still owe us a little bit on the TAP grant. That kind of closed down after things happened, but we got half of what they owed us, and there's still, I think there's $120,000 come in from the state. I would expect that I will be submitting a request in front of the board to request them to allow me to get the money out of last year's road maintenance budget, the $147,000 that we have calculated at this point that was money spent out of that article. So that will help us with cash flow. We haven't taken that yet. With having the 2 first blocks of the highway block grant, I am optimistic that the other 2 pieces will come in, and that we'll at least get that much money, which we're anticipating $177,000 from them for that road project. And I think other than our tax anticipation note, which we are trying to use very gingerly, if you will, the good news on the tax anticipation note appears that that money that the governor announced would be coming from the municipalities, that TAN interest was an item that could be requested from them for reimbursement. So if we have to sit on that TAN longer than we have to, not paying it back in July or paying part of it back, it appears that we'll be able to get reimbursed for that interest.
That will only cover us though from March until the end of August, as far as that interest goes on the TAN. Yes. So that's actually our window.
That is probably the time that I do anticipate that cash flow will be needing that injection. Typically in the second half of the year, I've gone years without needing to tap into that source in the second half. So I'm optimistic if we get some decent cash flow that we will not need too much TAN in the last few months of the year, but we have it there if we need it. It just has to be paid back at the end of the year. It is not something that we can span years with.
So the other thing, because you mentioned the taxes and the money that we still haven't collected in comparison to last year,
right,
at this time, the other area that is of concern, especially with our current situation, is you mentioned the college as being one of the sources of revenue, and higher ed's been really hit hard. And enrollments across the country are expected to be right now at least 20% down, if not more, which could have a financial impact on the college itself and the revenues that we have projected. So if you look at this as a worst case scenario, Russ, where would we end up come August in regards to?
Well, if we did not pick up, I believe the college is a little over $350,000 or almost $400,000 in revenue. So this half would be $200,000. To be quite honest with you, I believe that we'll be able to keep the ship afloat with, if we can collect 40 to 50% of our tax base, coupled with having that TAN in our back pocket as a reserve. I see us easily being able to, well, easily is probably not the right word, but I see us being able to get through the third quarter. And at that point, if things haven't loosened up, then we've got more troubles to talk about, if you will, on the cash flow side, getting that TAN. The county tax bills due the 17th of December. You'll notice in the list too, I did provide a listing of the expenses, that the big ones that I anticipated, school payments, I've reached out to anybody and everybody. Certainly, it was very handy to get a call from Deb Hooper to lay out their scenario, because they have new personnel coming in the area, and we won't have the luxury of having people who've worked with us for years in this system. We've got new people that we're going to have to work with in this thing, and I don't anticipate any problems, but it's just one more little thing in this whole scenario that makes it a little bit more difficult for us to know exactly where we are.
So Russ, when it comes to some of these payments, I know, they're scheduled. Are these things that we could push out a month if we had to?
Well,
no?
The county definitely, well, the county would come with a 12% interest rate. That's their charge, if you will, for being late. So it would be unusual to close the year without paying that bill, but that would be one of them. The other expenses on the list, the benefits, retirement, unfortunately, are very time sensitive.
Yep.
Yeah, those we have to keep them up. The school, I don't know. In looking at the cash flow, the Henniker School is looking at needing $500,000 in July and $500,000 in August.
Well, I'm looking at 600,000 in May.
Right.
Scheduled.
Well, we are cleaning up the previous years.
Okay.
We pushed off paying the bills, and then when we get to the month of June, the law says we got to have it cleaned up. So that's why we split what's left with the Henniker School. I gave them 600 in May, and we'll clean that up. I think a little over 700,000 in June. And that I'm kind of keeping the tan in my pocket, hoping I don't need it. But the reality is that I've got that money in my mind earmarked to take care of the school.
Okay, thank you, Russ. We had a constituent email. I'm not sure if it was the entire board, but I know I at least received an email. Can you provide, I know it's probably a pinch hitting role for you, but can you provide a little historical context on some of the taxes that are in arrears?
I can. Hold on one second.
And I'm not trying to reduce it down to like a Cliff Notes version, but just, is that consistent with what's been in the past? Is it growing? Is it staying average? Is it declining?
Yeah. Hold on a second. Let me just get to one of my spreadsheets, and I
think the board did everybody on the board receive that email?
We got,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that gets answered. So.
Okay. Okay. The way that I have all of my closing sheets in front of me for the past 4 or 5 years, which summarizes at the end of the year all of my outstanding receivables and current taxes and liens. So I will give you some context of just the current year taxes at the end of any given year. I could go into the liens, but it does change the numbers, but I think the number that you're looking for is, for instance, at the end of 2018, I had $850,000 outstanding in taxes on the current year. In 17, I had under $600,000 in taxes outstanding in that current year.
Are these the same sheets that's on our packet, page 40?
This particular sheet is not. These are, I'm going through my closing files.
Yeah, so this is as of year end, Scott.
As of year end of the different years, right. Right. And then
Russ, can you repeat that 2018 number or 2019?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Let me get, hold on a second. Okay, so went too far down. Okay, so in 18, we had $857,000 outstanding of the 2018 tax warrant as of 12/31. In 2017, we had $527,000 of the 2017 run outstanding at the end of the year. 16, we had $823,000 outstanding at the end of the year.
What was 19?
I'm sorry?
Do you have 19, Russ?
Hold on. Yes, 2019, $660,000 were outstanding.
And Russ, that money is actually the culmination of all the back taxes of each lot, right?
No, that
It's
is
not just
not.
for the
That is
year.
only the current year.
It's only the current year.
Yeah,
And
that
so
does
the
not
real
include the
number
liens.
is the addition of all those numbers?
Well, for instance, in 2019, of that 660,000, if you added liens into it, you'd get to 1,130,000.
So that's all the back taxes as well then?
That would be roughly $467,000 of liens that are placed on the properties.
That still dropped out a section that hasn't been leaned yet, though.
I'm sorry?
That still would drop out a section that hadn't been leaned yet.
That's right. Well, the section that hadn't been leaned is the current year taxes of the 660.
Okay.
So it's going up quite a bit.
Well, actually, it's down. 19 is down from 18, and that would explain why we had lost some of the cash flow, because the number outstanding was not as great. You know, meaning that it happens when you have $800,000 and $900,000 outstanding. I think you find that people are trying to clean up those taxes as they get into the new year. When you get down to the $600,000 level, I think some of that is there, but I also think that some of that is going to end up going to lien. The lien, for instance, that we did this year was $356,000, and that was liening 2018 taxes. That was the total lien. So when you look at what's outstanding of the current year of the 660, knowing that we did 356, you're looking at probably collecting another $304,000 on current receivables, and likely the balance is going to be adding to the liens. Unfortunately, that lien thing is a slippery slope, and once people get into it, it's hard for them to get out. So it ends up building more.
Russ,
So compare the end of 2019 to today. You spun me around there, so like.
I do not have, other than Kim's sheet, I do not have the receivable balances as of today in front of me.
The date on the sheet that I'm looking at here is 10/27/2018 with 415,000 in the first column. That's why I was asking if you knew about 19.
Unfortunately, I did not do my summary of where we are today. The 19 numbers are as of 12/31, and I did not summarize the taxes. So I apologize for that. I did not think of that.
Russ, where are we, since we're looking at outstanding taxes, where are we on wastewater, since that budget was tight in the beginning?
Well, we are later on the agenda tonight. We're going to discuss, hopefully, and I'll get permission to do at the billing. If I recall from my draft billing, we were, was it 350 or 360,000 in revenue, which when you look at it from the perspective of budget, that's what we're looking to raise. If we can do it again, then we would be raising the wastewater budget in total. And that is without any, there were no increases projected in the sewer thing because the debt service on this 3.2 was going to be 1 or 2 years out before it was going to hit us. So we don't have those.
Do you have any clue on how much or what bills are outstanding for that?
Oh, for
Wastewater.
Outstanding bill. Oh, meaning, yep, I know what you mean. The year-end receivables on the sewer. Yep. Yes, I do. Okay. So 2019 at the end of the year, current year taxes, there was 65,820 outstanding. In 2018 at the end of the year, current year taxes, 72,344. 2017 was a little bit more rugged year. There was $110,000, 393 outstanding at the end of the year. 16 was 71,917, and 15 was 59,000.
So the number that you present in 2019, is that taking into account cumulatively? And that's what's still owed?
Well, what happens, that is cumulative for them, because what happens with water and sewer, when they get a year old, the town of Henniker purchases them from the water and sewer, paying the interest to date, and then we place liens on the property as the taxing authority. So it becomes a town lien at that point. So water and sewer never go over a year.
Got it.
I'm still scratching my head trying to figure out. We have rumbling going on about how huge the number is of people that are not paying the taxes. And it sounds to me like I don't see evidence of a great increase unless you've got some different figures than what you've read off so far.
It appears that it is this volatile thing, and I recall back when we had that economic fallout when the stock market fell years ago, the year that actually hit, our taxes were at the lowest outstanding point we had, which made no sense to how the business was actually running in the country at that time. So it is, I could never try and explain exactly why we get the cash flow we do when we do. The taxpayers have usually gotten me the money I need to keep the town afloat in time, every time. At this point, I'm optimistic that we will get enough to keep us going on the first half. To be quite honest with you, I'm more worried about the second half, because if things don't loosen up and we get on the second half, December is going to be a real rugged month for us, trying to find money to pay those bills and continue to keep the school in cash, or schools in cash.
Well, and Russ, with the discussions that are going on now with health officials of a potential second wave, I think we need to start planning for the worst case scenario on the revenue end.
Right. Well, I don't know what other things I could personally do. We've done our best to keep the reporting up on the board side, and I am personally in that bank account on a regular basis, making sure I know what's being cut, what's clearing, and keeping my ears open on the street for when any money's coming out there. And
okay.
Russ, I just have a quick question. What is the percentage that we've spent to date in comparison to last year's operating budget?
Well, let's see here. On the expenditure side, for 20, hold on. That's wastewater. That's water. It's reserves. I need to get one more report that.
Okay. Russ, maybe you can get us that information either later on in the meeting or whatnot. I want to keep the agenda moving
Yep.
along.
Okay.
The kind of the point of the exercise was, yes, these numbers are large and they're concerning and stuff like that, but it's not anything that we haven't seen before, and they are trending. Actually, truth be told, they were trending a little bit better prior to the current events hitting. So I only offer that as context for its business as usual for the town. Don't take that the wrong way, but just understand that these are numbers that we've dealt with in the past and that we usually get a lot of this stuff cleaned up. So I only offer that because we had a constituent email us and was asking some questions about it. So,
Right.
Well, that was specific to the outstanding taxes, but as a
Correct.
financial picture as a whole, I think the board needs to stay on top of this and do our due diligence, especially since we don't know where revenues are going to come in.
could not disagree with you, or I couldn't agree with you more. It was, so I understand.
While we mentioned this, I was able to get the numbers, and actually, year to date, we were 20% at this time in 19. We're 20% at this time in 20.
And
So
that's
we
in
are-
comparison with the 2019 number.
Correct. January through April, I had 80. Hold on a second. No, I take that back. I had 90% of my budget left. I have 80% of my budget left now, so within 10%.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak up if I could.
Yes, sir, Peter.
Yes, and what was just mentioned about keeping tabs on revenues and how we are going to probably lose some, especially that rooms and meal tax I'm worried about, because that's a big one that we get every year. As Cordell was explaining in this so-called default budget, which is really last year's budget, he did say that the board has a prerogative of lowering our budget this year if we want to, or I think the New Hampshire Municipal was asking if we could change our budget and lower it from what we originally planned. And I would say if we could do that, perhaps we want to take a look at that. I'm not speaking necessarily of the operating budget, but some of the warrant articles maybe we could take out.
Well, and Peter, when I asked for all of this information, knowing that we would probably, hoping that the governor's going to pass something or tell us that he's signing off on something sooner rather than later, hoping that we can have, do a deep dive into the financial material that's been provided, get another update from Russ for our next meeting on where we stand and start having some of those harder discussions.
Right. I do hope that we are going to be able to, as a governing body, write our own budget or administer our own budget based on what he calls the default, rather than have to go through a town meeting. I think a town meeting right now is going to be very difficult. We want to get settled away and move on. And I think that's the best way to do it without cheating ourselves too.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Russ, anything else in conclusion on finance?
Well, in looking at the default budget, the operating budget would be $200,000 that we would need to find if we went to the default budget. I'm not sure if Cordell is still on, but the one question that I had on the monies on the warrant articles, the way that the wording was in the default budget, they said special and individual articles would be allowed, would also carry. So in 2019, we had that excavator purchase where there's $170,000. I'm wondering if that 170 would be available to us to move around on the budget, and if that is how they intend on doing it, meaning that summarize the articles that we had in 19, we've done most of them. Can we take some of that money and redistribute it among the articles that we want to do in 20? That's my question. I think the operating budget's pretty cut and dry as to.
But there could be some things that we could trim out of the operating budget. So I'd rather not even discuss that right now until we get into further discussions amongst the board at our next meeting.
Understood. The intent was only to bring up the point that we have some math that we'll need to work on, and getting that service for the water and sewer people, given those projects, is going to be a tall order, but the rest of it we might be able to work with. You know,
Right.
I think that some creative accounting, so to speak, and budgeting, and then I'm optimistic.
Okay. Cordell, you want to give a 30-second answer to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how things play out. If you, I hadn't thought about that money for the excavator.
Yeah.
Under this proposal, that amount of appropriation would be included in that default budget. Obviously, I don't think you're going to go out and buy another excavator with that money.
No, the intent was to redistribute it among some of the
Right.
projects that they wanted to do.
Right. So you would have that money that's appropriated and not spent on that. I think that probably, if you chose to do so, could be transferred to other items. And that would be a discussion among the board. Do you want to do that, or do you want to just not spend it? Or do you in fact want to try to rescind or reduce that appropriation?
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Russ?
and I am going to leave the meeting now.
Thank you,
Okay.
Cordell.
Thanks, Cordell.
Thank you as always, Cordell. Have a safe
Thanks,
day.
Cordell.
All right, well, that was a breath of fresh air. We have a nice segue into something that Joe's very passionate about and has done a fantastic job with it, and I'm eager to hear a little good news here. So, Joe, floor is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm actually going to pull up a quick PowerPoint just so people can see it. Just give me 1 second. Okay. So what we have here is what we're calling Henniker Helps. And the idea behind it is we know that with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have a lot of issues that people are going to have, specific financially. And we're looking at ways the town can try to help, not, offset it a little bit or try to ease the burden a little bit. And so we've gone through and we've got some stuff that's already available that people can actually already access. And then we have items that I'm looking for the board's approval to move forward on. So basically, the first thing we're looking at is some property tax relief. I've spoken to Russ as far as, again, the cash flow to make sure that we're going to be able to financially support an item like this. But my first idea is we take our July tax bill and we give people the opportunity to make 5 payments of 20% of their bill. So rather than paying their full bill as due, there would be 20% in July, 20% in August, September, October. They'd make themselves whole in November, so then the new bill would come out in December. The idea is giving them that opportunity to spread out their payments. By doing so, we would abate 4% of their interest. So state law requires 8% interest on any unpaid taxes. We can get into an agreement with somebody and have them sign an agreement, and the board can abate that interest. I don't feel that we should abate it to 0. That's the benefit of paying your taxes on your due date. But this gives them some sort of relief. So they're not paying the full 8%, they're paying 4%. And it gives them that opportunity to make those 5 payments of the 20% of their bill. If at any time they miss a payment, unfortunately, the agreement would then be voided. The 8% would then start rolling into the taxes, and they'd be required to pay their bill as going on. The other thing I've mentioned on here is for low and moderate income homeowners, and this is something through the state. And so starting May 1st, they can file, and I'll put this up on the website tomorrow morning so people can see it. But again, this gives them the opportunities to apply for rebates through the state to help with their property taxes. Again, I want to just stress the fact that if we have people who need exemptions or credits, we have extended that out. So we have elderly, blind, deaf, disabled, and veterans credits. Again, the link is on the website so that if they want to go on and apply for these exemptions through our assessing department, they're able to do so. Even though the town hall isn't open to the public, they're still able to apply for these. If they have questions, they can reach out to our tax assessment office. They can speak to Helga, and Helga can help them through the process. All of the forms are online. If for some reason they can't access the forms, we're happy to mail them to them, and walk them through the process, they can still come to town hall and pick them up, and we'll be happy to bring them out to them so that they can get those. This is just some different housing assistance. Again, people through our welfare department, if they need assistance, I just want them to know the program is up and running still. We are giving people assistance as needed. And then these are just some different food and household commodities. So again, so people can understand, you know, Henniker is now, the public schools are giving free meals to all students, including weekends. So you can access that. Again, we have a food pantry here in Henniker. They can access to get that. And again, the email addresses and everything is right on this for people to come out and take a look at it. Business assistance. Last week we held a town hall meeting with the SBA and with the New Hampshire Department of Economic Development. I'm not sure where the funding's at this point. They were kind of thinking by this point this week, the funding was going to be dried up as far as the new Paycheck Protection Program or whatever they want to call it at this point. But again, these are just some resources for people that we're going to be putting up at the website. So if businesses need assistance through the state or through the federal government, it gives them an opportunity to get to it. And finally, Russ kind of hinted upon it during his presentation, but again, we're talking about sewer payments as well. And I would propose we do something similar to what we're doing with the tax payments. Again, allowing people to make those 5 payments of 20% due July, August, September, October, November. And then again, on the agreement, we would do the same thing with the interest. It's 8% currently if you do not pay your sewer bill. If they go into an agreement, we would abate it down to 4% and give them the opportunity to make those payments. So from the board, I'm looking for direction on how we want to proceed with this. If this is something we want to move forward with as far as the payment plan for the taxes and the payment plan for the sewer.
Excellent work, Joe. Thank you.
Sure.
I agree that we have to do something, especially to provide relief. So do you want a motion?
That'd be great.
I'll make them, so we'll do one at a time. So I'll make a motion to accept or approve the extended property tax payment plans as presented.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Leon. Further discussion on the motion? Okay. We will do a roll.
Chris,
Go ahead. Go ahead, Leon.
The one thing I think we ought to understand is if we go to this plan, we're probably going to be talking about doing the same thing for the next bill.
Yeah, for the second bill. But this would be for the full year of 2020.
Yep. So, any other discussion? Ready to call the roll call vote? Chris Blombeck says yes.
Tia Hooper says yes.
Peter.
Scott Osgood says yes.
Peter Flynn says yes.
Leon Parker says yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the sewer utilities extended payment plans as presented.
Second.
There's seconded by who, please?
Leon.
Leon, thank you. Discussion on the motion. Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Scott
Peter
Osgood,
Flynn,
yes.
Scott?
All right,
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
great. Thank you. Joe, you don't need any more motions on anything else on that, right?
I do not, no.
No.
One
and I
question,
just-
how's Carol doing?
Carol is doing well. She's, as of right now, hoping to be back at work on June 1st.
All right,
Okay.
wow.
For the sake of the audience members, do we want to please identify who Carol was?
Sorry.
Is rather. Sorry.
Carol is our welfare director.
Got
And she's been out sick, so.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And Joe, on behalf of the board, excellent work, so appreciate
Thank
it. Thank you very much for pulling all
Yep.
those resources together and coming up with some great solutions for some of our taxpayers.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay, anything else on that, Joe?
I have nothing else on that.
Very good. We'll move along to item number 16, open patrolman position. Is Chief French out there in Zoom land?
Yeah, I'm
He
unmuting him
is.
now. I just unmuted him.
Very good. Chief French, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Hi, Matt.
How is everybody?
Good.
So As the board knows, Steve Dennis has resigned as patrolman to move on to the New Hampshire Fire Marshal's office. Obviously, it's been difficult for us to have any kind of celebration for him. He's not only on military leave, but he's obviously with the COVID-19, we're not able to do anything for him right now. So hope is once he's back from deployment that we'll have some kind of public gathering for him and wish him well. As we move forward, obviously we're looking to replace that position and was looking for some kind of approval or place to go with it. See what the board wanted to do.
Okay. I had the opportunity to speak to Chief French this afternoon, and I asked if we could kind of get a little clarity on the financial landscape before actually filling this position. So I would love to be able to get the board's input on this. And I generally support filling the position, but I guess I'm asking for a delay a little bit, just so we can find some clarity in the next 90 days.
Yeah, Chris, I actually agree with that. Right now, things are still up in the air, and they don't have, I know it will take a while to fill the position, but regardless, I think our, from a fiscal responsible end, I think we need to hold off on hiring somebody right now.
Okay. Further questions from the board?
Yeah,
Peter?
yes, I know how you feel about the fiscal issue here, but let's ask Chief French what the status is of filling the position as far as fielding enough officers to take care of the department. Chief, I'd like to know if how important it is to fill this position at this time. I assume the money's there from the resignation. You'd still have the money for that position. But what I think my colleagues are just saying is not spend that and reduce your budget.
No, that's not what we're saying at all, Peter.
No, we're just saying hold a little bit. Let's get a little clarity on what the fiscal situation is over the next 3 months. And
Okay, I'd like to get the also, but I still would like to know from Chief French how his staffing will be without this position filled.
Sure. Chief, can you put a little light on your face? You're just this dark.
He's in the shadows.
The shadow knows. Don't worry
Where
about
I'm
it.
sitting, I don't think I can. If I do, then the light's going to be right into the, and you won't actually be able to see me at all.
There you go.
So we have Alicia Burton, who's currently in the part-time academy. That finishes up in a couple of weeks. She's been a very fast trainee, so she'll be on the road pretty quick. So that'll help fill in those gaps. She'll be able to cover the some of the shifts pretty quickly. That comes with some of the experience that she had. You know, the long term obviously is really my concern. As long as moving forward, I can at least open the process and start going, because that typically is if it's an uncertified person, is going to be probably a 60-day process by the time we get advertising out there and start testing, doing the psychological and the background and all that stuff. It's going to be a solid 60 days before we're even done the entire process to come back to the board to actually request to hire them.
Okay, so you answered my question. In other words, right now, immediately, you're all set for another 60 days, whereby you could hold back on spending that money right now, as my other colleagues have asked.
No, we're holding our nose above water. I'll put it to you that way. I mean, it's not It's not easy. People are working overtime and stuff, but it's not our first time being shorthanded, so we'll make it work.
Well, if you're saying you'll make it work and you don't seem to be bothered by this at all, I'm fine with it, whatever Chris recommended and Tia supported. I just want to make sure you were comfortable with this holding off. That's all, and that's the only reason I asked.
Understood.
And you know why I'm asking, because I hear this somewhere else all the time.
Sure, understood.
Great, thank you. Further questions from the board? Leon?
Chris, we've been through a couple of years of competition for policemen. Recruiting has been going on. There's been departments stealing from each other and everything else. I think I think unless Matt has some candidates he wants to aim at, I don't think we ought to put off at least advertising a vacancy
Right.
for a very long period of time, because I expect that it's not going to be an easy position to fill. And, one of the other questions that we could probably talk about in non-public with the chief is whether or not this is the only person that he expects to leave.
Okay, further questions from the board?
Yeah, Scott,
Scott?
I'll jump in. Yeah, the way things are right now, we just don't know how they're going to be going in the near term. And I think that it's reasonable to just hold off until we see just what's going to happen to our budgets and everything else. Granted, it's an important position, but I think that we need to really watch the strings everywhere. So I support him holding off.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Can we set up a date certain to reconsider?
Sure, I'll put it in the form of a motion. I make a motion that we allow the police chief to advertise for the position with the understanding that there's a 90-day moratorium, and gives the select board the opportunity for a parachute clause if fiscal conditions deteriorate further out there.
I'll second it.
Second it. Chief, does that present to you the options you need?
Absolutely.
Okay. Further discussion on the motion at hand? Motion by Chris, seconded by Tia. Are we ready for a roll call vote?
Mhm.
Chris Blomback, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief. Anything else? How else is everything else going?
We're doing, I don't know how else to describe it. It's different. We're busy with certain types of calls and less busy with others, but we're still here doing our thing.
Great.
Chief, do you still need supplies? Or are you guys good for now?
The only thing that we are absolutely have zero of right now is any kind of aerosol disinfectant. We're good with cleaners, hand wipes, gel, all that stuff.
I'll drop some off tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
So what do you need aerosol disinfectant cleaners?
Correct. Like a Lysol type spray. That's the only
Yep.
thing we don't have.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. On behalf of the board, we appreciate everything you guys do every day. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Anything else on that? Okay. Moving along to item number 17, Joe, payroll service.
So this is something the board has asked me to research a little bit. And the idea behind it, one of the major issues we've run into for the town is for employees, we cannot offer direct deposit and we cannot offer earned time or PTO time on their checks. So they can't get balances to know where they stand for vacation time, sick time, comp time. Our current financial software package that we use does not offer the ability to be able to supply that to our staff. So what I've done is I've reached out to a couple different payroll processing companies to try to get an idea of what the cost would be. And again, I have a quick PowerPoint because it's easier over since I'm not in person. So just bear with me 1 second. All right, so what I did was I reached out to ADP, Checkmate, and Harper Payroll Services, which is out of Worcester, Mass. They never responded to me through my inquiries, so I have nothing from them. But I did speak to ADP and Checkmate to try to see how they can offer the service for us to be able to get what we need. So Checkmate, just to give you a little background on them, they're based out of Concord, New Hampshire. They are Kronos Premier Partner site. They currently work with approximately 30 municipalities and school districts in the state of New Hampshire, and they would be able to handle all of our payroll processing. They would be able to handle the direct deposit. They would actually supply paper. If we wanted to print check stubs for people, it'd be up to them. They offer an app that the employees would actually be able to go on and look at their accruals, look at their check stubs, things like that. They would handle all of our reporting to for tax purposes to the state and to the federal government, and they would handle our processing at the end of the year for W-2s. So that just kind of goes through with it. The other nice piece is they have an automated file already set up through the New Hampshire retirement system due to the fact of the number of municipalities and school districts that they already work with. So in going back and forth, this was the first quote they gave us. It actually came down in price, which was nice. Is a one-time account fee. They came down from $950 to $890 a person. But one of the things is we have approximately 95 payroll processes a month because of our one-time fire department workers who only get paid once a month. And when they charge it by the month. So you're paying $950 per employee per month. When I went back to them and told them, you're only processing this once a month, they reduced it. So we have 23 firefighters that are like that. They reduced it to $150 for that set of employees, and then $890 for the rest. So their all-in price was $8,700 a year to provide payroll services for the town of Henniker. And that includes the reporting to the retirement system and the W-2s at the end of the year. ADP, they gave us an original quote, which you're going to see, and then they came back and offered us something else, so I'll go over into that as well. Again, they're going to be able to provide all the payroll processing that we would need as well. They handle they can handle the New Hampshire retirement system. They've never worked with them. They have currently, they said, no New Hampshire municipalities, so they've never worked with the retirement system, but they would obviously have worked with other retirement systems, and they do have other municipalities throughout the country. They would also handle all of our reporting as far as federal taxes and state taxes go as well. So all the tax filing, they also have a mobile app that people would be able to generate, look at it, and they would see their accrual balance and see their check stubs. The one issue is Checkmate, as I'll get into when I talk about the comparison, is based in Concord. So the ease, if we have to still have paper checks, and that's something that the board is going to want to maybe decide as well, is if we go this way, if we want to mandate all employees to have direct deposit, or if we want to still allow employees to get a paper check as well. Because there's more of a holdup with the paper checks because in ADP's case, they're coming out of Colorado typically, so UPS has to send them, and they do get concerned with weather and things like that if we would get them in time for payroll payday. Their original quote was $11,113 for the year. And talking to them though, they have this new program that's called Workforce, and it's a pilot program, and so they came back and it works out to be $7,100 a year through ADP for the same process, for the W-2s, for retirement system reporting, and for them to handle everything. So again, the comparison's a little bit off because the costs are different now. But in looking, and I've actually, Russ, myself, and Annette did a demo with both Checkmate and ADP. They brought us onto their system. They showed us how it works, how the reporting would go, things like that. For me, I liked, and speaking to Russ, we like Checkmate better, just because of they're familiar with the New Hampshire retirement system. And we think a lot of we have a couple deposits we make for a 457B through Great Lakes Retirement that they're familiar with. And we have, when you hit the 520 hours of vacation or sick time, you can end up getting an extra 4 hours built in. They said they would be able to accommodate that module easier than what ADP came in at. So again, the comparison, Checkmate is essentially $8,700, and then ADP was $7,100 to handle it. So,
Joe, I just have a quick question on the comparisons. The one thing that I didn't see on there was, are they going to hold the liability? It should be in the contract. I don't know if you've received draft contracts from either company.
We have not, no.
About changes in tax law, and are they going to be the ones responsible for that liability if, say, something's not processed or withheld according to the new updated tax laws? I know ADP usually takes that coverage or takes that liability away from whoever they're servicing. I didn't know what Checkmate does.
Sure. So both companies, and Russ, I unmuted you if you want to chime in as well because you were on this. But both companies would adapt any tax law changes and make the necessary changes and take the responsibility of making those reporting changes to the government if that's the case.
But if, say, something was miscalculated, a municipality was in New Hampshire was recently sued over not withholding the proper tax amounts. So I didn't know if there was specific language in their contracts, or if you could get a copy of their contracts so we could review them.
Sure, I haven't gone to contracts because, again, I just went through this essentially the bid just to kind of see how the board wanted to drive with it. So, Russ, do you have anything you want to add?
If I can chime in for just a second. One of the things that I can tell you is that a payroll that goes through my office, I will see it before it goes, and I remain current on payroll despite the fact I wouldn't be doing it anymore. But I'd like to believe that if there were any of those errors, I'd catch it before the 3 days when the tax deposit was made. So the reality is that at the bottom line of the report, it's easy to check Social Security and Medicare taxes on a gross basis. The withholding can be somewhat subjective, but every other number that goes through the withholding, we have a cross-reference of what it should be. So we know before that thing is done or before that thing is issued, because we get a draft on the screen, we get to see it before it goes. It would run through our check. I don't mean to downplay the importance of their assurance that tax laws are adhered to, but they do have a second set of eyes in me, and I can be a pain.
But regardless, Russ, people do make mistakes, and I want to make sure if we're paying for this service that the liability is held with them, so the town cannot be held responsible, because that could be a very large lawsuit.
Understood.
Russ, are you in favor of doing this? Is this going to save you time? Is this going to be neutral? Is this going to allow you to do some other things, or what?
I'm conflicted with that, to be quite honest with you. $8,700 is a lot of money for payroll. We're issuing checks now for free. The reporting on the vacation sick time is done on a quarterly basis. We try to do it sooner than that, but it gets to be a little bit cumbersome to do it. This was more a demand, if you will, from the employees and the board, is my understanding. So I'm fully behind it. I'm just cheap.
Yeah, but at the same time, the employees, they do and they should be receiving their vacation, comp time, and sick time balances every time a check is issued, to make sure that they're not over their accrued amount, or to make sure that they're not losing because they haven't used time, which we've had happen in the past. And that's really unfair to the employee. What I'm hoping to see out of the automatic payroll, system is to reduce the burden in your office, so we can start thinking big picture when it comes to the town finances and start projecting out and looking long term.
I will of course support any decision the board makes. I'm on board with either case. So it isn't a problem. I don't disagree with you on they're having their time available. That is the one thing that I'm real careful about, and that's what takes the time. I have Annette processes the payroll. I review it. And then when it comes time for these things, I go back and read every time card to make sure that every note that was made on there is properly reflected. Occasionally I catch something that has not been recorded, and given the system that we have now, I can make those corrections. This will just be new for us. I've worked for companies that have had ADP or payroll services, and I'm not unfamiliar with how that works. So it's just different, and I'm all for helping the employee. If that has been that big of a burden, then I'm all on board with trying to get this fixed.
Well,
Russ,
oh, go ahead, Chris.
Russ, being the software package Sage, they're pretty name brand stuff. Why can't you just toggle on like the accrual of vacation time and stuff like that? I mean, isn't that just up in the setup menu, like show
No.
vacation time, show?
They only do vacation and sick, and on a very limited basis. There's no, there is no ability to build in, for instance, on the vacation side, the tenure status. So when you get up to 20 years, you have 4 weeks vacation, 1 week or 2 weeks when you start. They don't have the ability to handle that programming. And the direct deposit side would be extremely manual. Meaning there would be no automation at all. We would be logging into Citizens, going, because we're small enough that it's not a case that there's an automated package out there waiting to solve us unless we go to a payroll service. So in order to accommodate direct deposit and that time, the most efficient way is certainly with the payroll service. We could do it. But it would be very cumbersome to try to get that all done. So early on, when Joe came to me with this and we started looking around and talking about it, I understood exactly where they were coming from. As I said, I will certainly do my best to accommodate, but at the end of the day, I'm just cheap.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So on the direct deposit there, how many banks are we really dealing with the employees? Is it just Citizens and TD, or are there a multitude of banks?
Well, we do have our employees bank with a lot of different entities. It's not just your local banks. We have people taking advantage of some of those online banks. It's certainly the convenience for our part-time fire rescue people would be huge, because these people are coming to town 1 or 2 days a week and they're not coming back for another week. So I see it, there's definitely employees who will benefit from this decision.
Well, and it will also benefit the employees, because when they get their checks, some of them need to go make it to the bank to cash those checks prior to the bank closing. So instead of leaving work early or taking a break to go down to the bank to deposit their check, it will just be there for them.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes, Peter?
Yes, Russ, I assume that direct deposit could be also to not just a regular checking account bank, but to a credit union in addition to, the regular bank.
I checked into that, because when we first did it, when I first talked to Citizens about this, the direct deposit, there was a fee for every one of the break-offs of the check that you did.
Yeah.
So if you had 4 places you wanted to send your money, there was a fee. These, the payroll services, Checkmate said, nope, you can do up to 10. And we've already got New Hampshire Federal Credit Union, the Great West Retirement. Those are direct deposit things, which will help getting the money in the right place sooner. So yes, they will accommodate that and allow the employees to do 8 more choices. So
Right, and the employee is also going to have control over their account. So even with ADP, they have full functionality. So the employee, if they have a change in status with their banking account, they can then go in and populate a new banking account to transfer that money into.
Yeah.
It's relinquishing that responsibility to them is awesome, because for us, it's chasing the information, getting a signature, then logging in and getting it into the system. If the employee can just access that through an app, and Paychex app is up now. I remember from the ADP meeting, they said that one was at least 90 days away on their new workforce situation. There was another advantage of Checkmate. I do want to make one correction to a statement Joe did make, though, and it was regarding the paper checks. I think it was the Checkmate individual that told us that we cannot mandate the employee to take direct deposit in this state. So we have to offer the opportunity for the checks. And Checkmate's situation is they give us check stock and we can bang them right out of a printer. As Joe said, ADP ships them to us. And to be honest with you, I mean, with everything that's going on right now, I would really be nervous on Wednesday mornings if I was waiting for a UPS truck. Well, that brings up another point.
Yeah.
Thursday mornings, because the one change for this direct deposit, they need 48 hours. The bank needs 48 hours to process that deposit. Monday morning, we show up at work, and granted, with Joe's new system, they're reporting their time cards to us electronically. Sometimes we got to go remind the guys, but at the end of the day, by noontime, we have all of the information for the payroll. Checkmate offered us the opportunity to build a spreadsheet like we use right now, to line up the columns with them, and then we wouldn't have to go through employee by employee. We could just upload the sheet and get that payroll in. But the bottom line is that even if it's Monday at noontime, they still need 48 hours. So when a holiday hits, I can't see anything other than us having to change our payroll date to Thursday.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, it's something that's, I believe it's actually in the policy for Thursday, because we attempted it several years ago, back in the long time when Joe DeMore was on the board. We had talked about that, and I think we changed the policy, but we never did take the next step and go to Department of Labor. So we would need to notify them to, I guess, request permission. I can't imagine there'd be a problem. And then paydays would become Thursday. Implementation would be at the end of the next calendar quarter. So we would be looking to get all of our stuff in there with final numbers hitting on June 30th for implementation on our first payroll in July.
Okay. And so what was the answer to, does this actually save you time?
I do believe that once we get the system set up, I mean, initially we're going to have to, we're going to have to get everything up to date, up to the minute, so to speak, make sure all the payroll is fully reconciled, and then get it into their system. So there'll be some work to get it done, but once it's there, I do see that it's going to be it will be a time saver. And
well, and not just for you, Russ, but for the other employees that were involved, like with stuffing envelopes, and even for the employees picking up checks, etc.
Yeah, no, that's all. It was never that I didn't want to do this. It was just cheap. Sorry.
I love those words. Go ahead, Leon.
One of the way the presentation was made to us by Joe, I understand his question to be, do we want to go with HCM or ADP? I'm persuaded by the fact that HCM is a more local, about 2 or 3 facts. One is that HCM is more local, the checkmate system. We can reach real humans faster if we need to go wring somebody's neck for not doing a good job. And the thing that Russ just said about their being able to pump out checks and get them out to people, for those people who don't want direct deposit, because I understand under the law, we've got to give people the opportunity to get a paper check if they want it. And the big thing for me is that they clearly have a lot of experience with the municipal government situations. So that would be my suggestion, is that we go with checkmate or HCM.
I just have a quick question. Joe, is there a list of municipalities that they currently serve?
Yeah, I
Or
put a
have you
couple.
checked
I followed
references?
up. Yep, I followed up with Boscawen and Hooksett, which were 2 of the communities that they listed, and both have had no issues with checkmate with the payroll service.
And have they provided you a copy of their security policy?
I have got no policies from anybody yet. Again, it was just the quote that they sent us. I do know. Go ahead. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, I was just going to say, in our discussions, I can say that the guy from Checkmate was very familiar. We had a very educated discussion on the payroll. I think we bored Annette and Joe with how detailed we got, but this guy was able to answer all of my questions. And one of the things that I think Checkmate has over ADP is their willingness and ability, according to their discussion, is to handle our paid time off calculations. There are several categories: vacation, sick, holiday time we track for the transfer station, comp time, and military time. So any of those things, they felt that they'd be able to accommodate, and as long as we could lay out a formula for them, they could get them on the stub. I had nothing bad to say about ADP, but I did not get that same sense that they were willing to deep dive into our formulas, if you will, to get our pay time off handled properly. So I personally think checkmate's the way to go.
And
So
Tia,
I have another.
to
Oh,
answer
go
your first question on the security side, Casey, who was the representative from Checkmate, he did go into a great deal. And he did talk about how everything there, I don't have the policy, but again, Russ, you can correct me. He went in to talk about the encryption that they do offer as far as the data going back and forth. And the fact it's a single point cloud service that they basically use to store all the data.
So if you can get a copy of their contract and their security policy.
Yep.
What was my other question? The other question was integrations with other finance packages. If, as part of our warrant articles, we had technology upgrades. So if we were to upgrade our financial package, I want to ensure that this also integrates with multiple financial systems that we might possibly be considering.
And I can reach out.
I was going to say, one of the things we talked about was the spreadsheet on the input, but they had also said that they were able to export to any situation that we needed in almost any format. ASCII or Excel is very widely used when
I'm not thinking about spreadsheets, because if we were going to get a new finance system, it should be uploading right into a system automatically. We shouldn't have to be handling imports and exports of data.
When I have another phone call into the Hooksett Town Administrator, when I speak to him, I will find out what financial package they specifically use. And when I speak to a couple others, just to get an idea on how it does communicate, which is what I think you're asking.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. The other thing they do offer, and it's included in the quote that's in your package, and I didn't bring it up yet, but I did mention they're a Kronos partner, and Kronos is basically a time management package. It gives employees, and I'm not saying to go this way, I'm just for education purposes, it's time management. So they have apps for people to punch in, punch out. It's the punch clock for people to punch in, punch out, or punch in and punch out from their workstation. And in the event they do that, there is no uploading at all, even from the Excel spreadsheet. Basically, the department supervisor would okay the time. It would go to finance. They would okay. They'd hit go, and away it went. There would actually be no inputting at all, because it's all handled through Kronos.
Correct.
So.
And that's what I utilize at my workplace.
Yep.
But I just want to make sure that even if we're getting reports back from whatever company, we're not manually downloading reports and manually uploading them into our financial system. It should be a seamless transition between both packages.
Yep.
Chris?
Yeah. Go ahead, Leon.
For the purpose of moving this discussion along, I would like to make a motion that we authorize Joe to enter into negotiations with HCM over the Checkmate system and get copies of a contract so that all the questions that Tia and other people have about what's in the contract can then be dealt with.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it, and if we include in that a list, the security policy, please.
I've got it. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. It's been seconded. Further discussion. Just want to confirm the total cost on this is $8,300 inclusive of W-2s and any startup costs?
It's 87.
8,700. But
Yeah.
that's everything, soup to nuts.
That's your W-2s. That's everything reporting. Yes.
And it's also an opt-out contract where you can opt out at any time?
We haven't seen the contract.
I haven't seen the contract yet. So.
Okay.
So this is just negotiating.
Correct.
Joe will send us the contract, and then we can look it over and give final approval at our
Okay.
next meeting.
Further discussion on the motion.
And then
All right, we have a motion by Leon, seconded by Tia. Roll call vote. Chris, yes?
Tia, yes.
Peter, yes.
Scott, yes.
Leon, yes.
All right, great. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Good work, Joe
Thanks.
and Russ. Let's see. Item 18, first reading, sidewalk dining policy. Joe.
So I prepared this prior to the governor in anticipation of what I anticipated being the first phase, which it ended up being. Really, this is geared towards 3 establishments in our downtown. because they're the ones who would be able to utilize it. 4, depending on the ice cream shop if that ends up opening. But the idea behind this is to allow restaurants to be able to use the sidewalks to have some tables. You know, the policy, when you take a look at it, it's pretty specific. I've actually taken policies from Durham and Newmarket and Portsmouth and kind of merged them together to make sure that, number one, we're complying with ADA compliance to allow the people to be able to pass and forward. And then the other big piece is to be able to provide liability insurance, naming the Town of Henniker as an insured partner as well over the space. They'd be responsible for it. They'd be responsible for cleaning it. They'd be responsible for the upkeep. The communities that I looked at allow it year round. They don't just specifically gear it towards the summer, but there's an understanding that when you renew that you have to take those, especially in the wintertime, you have to take your tables in every night, chairs in. So if you decide you want to keep them up. So in the event snow removal has to happen, we're not dealing with that. So this is, again, the first reading of the policy that I put together, and I attached just a draft application for people to take a look at.
So this isn't a temporary proposal that's.
It was not my idea for it to be temporary, no. Again, if we want to look at it that way, we can. I think it's my own opinion. I think it's great to be able to go through a little downtown and you see people outside enjoying dinner and enjoying something to eat, having a cup of coffee, things like that.
It is annually renewable.
It is annually renewable, yep.
So I'm not seeing like a start date and an end date of.
Well, I did not put a start date under duration because we hadn't passed it yet. So that was, you know, but we can look at a, you know, if we say, let's say April, that would be the renewal date.
I have a question.
Peter?
Yes, Joe. Now, I talked to you today about this, and I told you that there was some kind of a policy or law that we had on the books that might be under zoning pertaining to obstruction on sidewalks. I just want to make sure that this doesn't conflict with that, and how we can make it not conflict with it. If it does, can we? How do we make it fit? Have you checked that out?
I have checked this out. I sent the policy to our planner, to Mark Bougier, to have him take a look at it as well to make sure that it complies with any ordinances that are current. And he has no issues with it. Again, just as long as we're maintaining the space for ADA to be able to allow people to pass.
The one approval that I'm not seeing on the form is the highway department. And since they're responsible for the roads and the sidewalks, I think it would be beneficial if the highway superintendent was also listed under here.
Sure.
Further questions from the board?
Yeah. Have we had any
Peter?
feedback from the restaurants?
I've spoken to Abby's Cafe, who's in favor of this, and she was also going to be speaking to Daniels, who I believe was looking to also be able to utilize this. I have not spoken to Sonny's to see.
Daniels is.
Yep.
I move we take this ordinance to the second reading.
I'll second it.
Motion by Peter, seconded by Tia. Further discussion on the motion? Roll call vote. Chris Blomback, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Looks like a good start. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go about old business now. Item number 19, discussion Azalea Park grant update. Who will be speaking on this?
I'll speak
Susan?
on it.
Susan, you're muted.
I can
Oh,
unmute her.
hold on.
Will Susan be talking or Scott?
I'll talk. Yeah, we had a discussion last week about. We had a discussion last week about the work the school is doing, as well as the work that Azalea Park has done. And we've reached out to DES, Laurie Summers, and asked her two things. One about, you know, the funding that we need to finish, and the other was about any conflict with the work that the school is doing. And she's responded to us with a few questions. And she also gave us a list of the items that are necessary to finish the closeout. And so we're just waiting to hear back from her and to get some more details on that.
So she sent an original email this afternoon, or in response, I guess, to yours, Scott. Did she? And then
Yes.
she had some questions. Did she follow up with that?
She said she would. She's in and out of the office this week, but I expect an answer from her when she gets back in.
Okay.
I gave her some more information on the school's engineers details and on the details that we had on our rain gardens. She wanted to be sure that the tanks are not going on a rain garden that's already been built, which is not the case. So it should be an easy step to get past.
Correct. And but did I also see something? Maybe I misunderstood what she was saying. She wasn't sure about riding shotgun on a shoreline permit.
Say that again?
I didn't see that.
So I don't have a copy of that email, Chris. If you could send that around so the board has that communication.
Oh, I
Joe's
thought
got it.
everybody
If you
had
want
it.
to put it up, Joe.
Yeah, I can put it up right now. Hang on, I'm just
Yep.
getting it.
Okay.
All
I
right,
thought there was
it's-
something about, I thought she was questioning something about the shoreland permit.
Well, the question was, is there any, well, I can't think of the word.
Oh, this is Scott's
Yep.
response, sorry.
Probably just scroll down on that email, no, Joe?
Oh, that would work, huh? Now I gotta find it again. There it is.
Yeah, her concern was the propane line or tanks going to interfere with one of the rain gardens? And the answer is no, because that rain garden has not been built, and if it has to be moved, it'll get moved. That was her question.
Okay.
But also they've taken, am I in?
You're
Yes.
in.
Okay. They've also the school has taken into consideration where that other rain garden would be, bioretention 6, which hasn't been built yet, but they've been able to place the propane tanks in such a way that it shouldn't interfere with that, nor with the snow plowing, nor with the movement of the dumpster. We went through that with both Matt Colby and Tom Weston, and we figured, I think, a proper spot for everything. And the committee has no objections to this as long as shoreland is okay, and as long as they give consideration to the suggestions from our stormwater person, Tom Ballestero.
Sounds good.
Joe, can you call up Lori's? She had one question in there. If you get the email that's on screen here, can you scroll that down a little bit to see her response?
That's right here, isn't it?
No, that's
Not
from
moving.
Scott.
No, the hello, thank you for your message explanation.
Yeah, it's not showing up.
It's not showing up. I've got it says hi, Lori.
All right, let's try again.
See if I have it.
Yeah, no,
There's
right,
a yellow line right there.
scroll up a little bit on that, Joe. Right there. It's hard. She goes, I am reading your message and am concerned that they are planned to be installed as you note. So that's the only sentence that had me a little concerned.
And is that her highlight or is that somebody else's highlight?
That's hers.
That's her highlight.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
She
at
was
that
concerned
point,
that the
Scott,
tank.
I'm sorry, I don't think you had sent her all of the maps at that point. Did you not send her subsequently some maps that would have answered that question?
I did. I sent her two more much cleaner copies of it, and I parsed down that 18,000 kilobyte package we had into two sheets so that she could see clearly what's done and where it is.
And And that would be answered too by their permit, when the school goes for the shoreline permit.
And I do have Matt here because he was going to speak a little bit to it as well. So I'm just going to mute him if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, welcome, Matt. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I just wanted to check in and let you guys know that, well, Susan had let you know that we met with Susan and Scott. The location for the tanks and the rain garden and the new dumpster location are all marked out with spray paint in the surface. So if any of the select board wanted to go by and check that out, you could do that. And we did start the process of applying for the shoreline permit. Our engineers did.
Did your engineer have any conversation with the DES regarding, I think one of the things we asked is to make sure that they were aware that there was a grant?
Yeah, they were going to putting that specifically in the application about the grant process and to make sure that the two were connected, the existing shoreline permit and the other, so that somebody was looking at them in context, I guess is what I mean by connected.
Sure. Did your engineer come back and say that there was any potential red flags, or was it looking okay?
I haven't heard anything.
I talked to the engineer, and he said, no, there's no correlation between the two projects.
Great, thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Okay. Further questions from the board?
Chris,
Yes, Leon.
I'm having a little problem with the discussion because now we're mixing up what I understood to be two different issues. One is 28,000 that some paperwork was supposed to be submitted to DES and the town was going to get reimbursed for the money that we'd spent. And then the other situation is, where do the school tanks go? Where do we stand in getting our $28,000 back, and why is it taking so long?
Okay, let's get straight from Susan's mouth about what's going on with the grant reimbursement. So go ahead, Susan.
Put it up, Joe. Put that list up that Laurie gave us of the items that we have to get done. It was on the email that she sent. A couple of items.
Okay, go ahead, Susan, while Joe pulls that up.
Sachi Howard, who was in charge of the fund, ARM fund grant, has sent you all the communications that you had asked for. So you have those in hand. And both she and Scott are now working on finalizing the report, putting in the final report. They've both been in touch with Lori Summers, who's the person of record at DES, and she is working with them. And they're at this point setting up a Zoom meeting to finalize the report information that they need. They have sent in the past some report information that was incorrect. And so now we're in a position, both are free to help. Both Sachi and Scott are free to work with Lori and to finish this up.
So Susan, I'm looking on the screen at deliverables that are scheduled in 2018. What's been done and what hasn't been done? Because I'm seeing final accounting for the upland stormwater management system and then annual inspections.
That's what they have to finalize. That's the report that they're working on. We have a monitoring and maintenance plan, and they just have to put it down on paper as to what has been done in January of 2018 and
So
as well as this spring.
So you're talking about the deliverable that's marked December 2018?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was due in 2018?
I think it's a 5-year contract that we have with them, so there's a little bit of room to move there. But yeah, basically we need to get with the contractor and the engineer, confirm all the details of the post-construction, and then make sure we continue with the yearly inspections.
Yep.
And Sachi's not an engineer nor a contractor, so I thought I'd jump in and help her.
But she's a force of nature.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. That's why I'm there.
And it will be done, I assure you. And the ball is rolling. It's moving forward.
Okay. Do you have, Susan, do you have any timelines in your head that you think that this information might get filed so that we could put some members of the boards at ease?
I would suspect they are just beginning with talking with Lori, but I would think over the next 2 months, they will be getting this process completed. Scott, what's your thinking on this?
I think that's a reasonable time frame. Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, you guys all know that I hate bureaucracy. But I'm a little, I need a little bit more comfort from Lori that the two projects can be viewed separately.
Yeah.
So I would have,
And to make sure
I was
there's no
secretly,
impact.
I just checked my email and I was hopeful that Lori may have gotten back to, so Scott emailed, Lori got back to,
Right.
Lori got back to Scott. Scott rightfully immediately answered her question. I would have loved to have seen an email to say that, you know, they're not connected. Go ahead, do whatever you got to do. But I got to wait, unfortunately, and I just hate doing this kind of stuff. But
I'll let you know when I get the email.
It will be resolved, I'm
Well,
sure.
is there any way that, we could get that report done sooner rather than later? I know you guys just said potentially 2 months, but when we initially discussed this or got the first report, I think it was like October or November, somewhere in that time frame, we were told it was being worked on and it would be a couple of weeks.
Well, that's what was happening at the time, believe me. And as Sachi reported, several times she got misinformation as to what was required. She prepared things, and then someone moved on to a different department. Someone else came in and they wanted some other information. And then frankly, Rob had open heart surgery. And so that's what happened.
Plus, we have a 2-inch stack of emails back and forth to try to get it resolved for the public record. So there was a lot of work going on there to try to keep it on track.
We all know that it needs to be resolved, and it is going to be resolved. And I will try to find out the 2 things you've requested as to whether or not there's going to be any problem with the permits. And I will also try to find out the time frame
for the sake
as
of
best we can.
So for the sake of expediency, since there is an active conversation between Scott and Lori Summer, who is the administrator of that program, would the board be satisfied enough if you've got an affirmative letter from Lori to allow the project to proceed so that the school can get their work done, we can get some people working, and just keep this ball moving down the road, and we can task Joe with being judge and jury on the letter and whether or not it's satisfies the board.
I want to see the permit come back from the state because they just submitted that permit. It could be somebody else looking at that permit besides Lori. Lori probably hasn't seen that permit come in, so I think we're a little premature on that.
Yeah, we have no business with that permit, and the permits take a while to get done. So I wouldn't touch it.
Matt, do you have any input on how long the shoreline permit would take? Usually, I mean, Lori Summer handles the shoreline permit program.
But she's not the only one. She has other people working with her.
Right, and they shouldn't actually be starting the project until they actually have that permit.
Yeah, it's
No,
a good
I-
engineering firm. They know how
Correct.
to do it.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just trying to keep the ball moving so that this doesn't just keep washing up on our shores.
Yeah, but you're jumping the gun.
I'm pushing the bureaucracy. I prefer that. That's a little nicer.
The frustration I have is that ever since I first came back onto the board, I've been hearing that there's money we've paid out on kind of a loan basis that was going to be reimbursed. And I was led to believe back in those days it was a matter of putting together a summary of the costs and getting the money from DES. And the discussion we've just had sort of ignores the fact that we got $28,000 hanging out there that was supposed to be reimbursed.
We honestly are not ignoring that fact, Mr. Parker, I can guarantee.
I would back the Azalea Park Committee too. I don't think there's any ill intent there. I think it's a volunteer board. You've had some health issues on that board. They're doing some great, passionate work. I don't have any doubt in my mind that we will get that reimbursement. I understand some of the board members' concerns about getting that money, and I'm just trying to pragmatically find common ground so that we can keep this thing going forward. And
I understand.
So,
I will keep you informed as we go.
would the board be satisfied if Scott got a letter back from Lori stating that it's okay for them to proceed with the work?
I'm not comfortable if they haven't approved a permit. I'm not comfortable with agreeing to have the Henniker School District continue with the work, especially since a question's already been raised by Lori about the project and the impact on the projects. If we need to make sure that we get reimbursed, and if there is an impact on that reimbursement, we need to take care of it.
There's no impact because the two issues are not together at all.
Matt, would a delay of 2 weeks set you guys back terribly?
I would not support any delay whatsoever on this.
All right, I'm asking Matt a question.
I think that it will be helpful for us to be able to move forward with contractors not starting any work on digging propane, but to know that the board is willing to site the tanks on that location allows us to start. At this point, I think our biggest holdup is ordering the equipment that would be installed within the school building related to a conversion to propane from oil, and the scheduling of removing the giant oil tank that's outside the other side of the school. But our plan originally was to be able to start this work when school got out in June. So I don't think a 2-week delay is an issue, but I think a sense from the board about if the site is a viable site for the school district would be helpful.
Okay. What is the board's feeling on the sites? I personally have no problem with where it's sited. Tia?
Me?
I wish it wasn't next to the ball fields, but.
I like to say something, sir.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think obviously we can't do the project until we have the shoreline permit in place. However, as Matt just stated, if we could authorize at least the placement and let them get started on the project, and barring any problems coming up in the future, and also contingent upon that permit being granted, I have no problem with him pursuing it now, as you do, Chris. I'll second your motion.
Okay. I'm kind of just polling everybody on the positioning of the tanks per Matt's ask. Leon, what are your thoughts?
I wish there was a better place for them, but I spent some time looking at the map, and unless we want to do a lot more piping and go a lot further away, it is.
No, I agree with you. It's a tough location.
But it's under the circumstances probably as good as we can do.
Yeah, but also there's another aspect of this. It seems like every time we have a project with the school district, whether it's a playground or this, we have certain Cogswell Trust land that was given to us, and we've allowed them to utilize things over and over again. And we should probably have a proposal from the school of what property they might be able to give back to us so we can become whole again.
I don't think that has anything to do with this discussion.
Seconded.
It wasn't a motion.
I think it does.
I doubt it.
All right, so where are we? So is it by consensus that from all five of us that the location that is selected, we would sign off on?
With
And
me, it is.
if not, where do you propose? So I'm good by where it's proposed. It's not the most perfect spot, but I think it's as best you can do down there. Tia?
Well, they had that second location. I understand that parking, you know, it's always going to be a concern. But I really wish it was not next to those ball fields or even in those ball fields.
I agree with you, Chris.
Okay. Leon?
Yeah,
Scott?
Yeah, I think it's the most reasonable place for the tanks.
Okay. That's about I think that's the degree of comfort we can give you right now, Matt. I wish we could move the whole thing along, but I'm sensing I'm sensing a little board reluctance.
I appreciate all of the board's efforts on behalf of this and all of the projects and infrastructure concerns of the town of Henniker.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan and Scott, just as best you can, shepherd that little puppy along as best you can so that,
Definitely.
all right. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Further questions on this subject?
Thanks for your support very much.
I had a chance to walk when I looked at the location for the dumpster and stuff like that. I had a chance to walk through the park and it's absolutely amazing and gorgeous down there. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Scott or Joe, where are we at? 20?
We are
Yep.
at 20, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
second
it's gonna-
reading, public
Yeah.
hearing, zoning permit.
And it's page 82 in the book, or 81 for
Yep.
Joe's update.
Okay, Joe, go for it.
So again, this is a second reading and a public hearing on the zoning compliance permit. I presented this last month to the board. The idea behind it is because we have not adopted RSA 674 or 51, which is the enforcement mechanism behind the building code, we haven't officially adopted any type of building code. In response to that, I've drafted a zoning permit because under our ordinances, we have the ability to have a permit in reference to zoning. So if you read our zoning, it specifically calls out a permit required, and it gives the selectmen the ability to adopt whatever regulations to implement this permitting system. And that's what I've drafted.
Okay. Have you had any pushback or any comments, either pro or con, from the builders in town about this?
I have had no comments. You know, the big change is that any permit would be, or any building would require a permit. And that's going to be the major change because it's speaking to zoning. It's not speaking to the actual building. So we're looking at the placement of the building to ensure that it's within, it's not falling into the setbacks. And we're ensuring that the use is there is an approved use for the property that we're looking at.
And that
Okay.
also waives the $5,000 thing that
It
we currently
eliminates
have.
it. It eliminates it.
It does. Yep. And I've spoken to our attorney about that. And and speaking to Attorney Mayor, the $5,000 was specifically is calling out building permits. And this is not a building permit. This is a zoning permit. As of right now, we read for first reading an amendment to ordinance 25. I haven't put that back on the agenda for tonight. So as of right now, moving forward, zoning permits are not costing anything. So a $5,000 rule, again, they're pulling a permit, but they're not paying anything for it as of right now until we make that amendment to ordinance 25.
All right.
Have you
Further
worked with
questions
Mark
from
on
the-
this, Joe?
I have, Mark has seen this and supports it.
So if I'm Johnny homeowner and I'm getting a mortgage and I need a certificate of occupancy, I know that paragraph 11, subsection B says that Henniker does not issue certificates of occupancy. Does that, by having that verbiage in there, does that relieve the person obtaining the mortgage from having to get a certificate of occupancy?
So we are
No.
not the only community in the state of New Hampshire that does not do building permits and does not issue certificate of occupancies. There are several others within New Hampshire. Sununu New London and Epsom, just to name a few, do not require building permits and only do zoning permits.
Right.
So we would supply them with a letter if the bank requires it, letting the bank know that we do not offer building inspecting and we do not do COs, so that they can bring that to their mortgage company and supply that to them. And then it would be up to the mortgage company and how they want to proceed. If they want to go forward and get a private inspection done to certify it, that would be on them. But mortgage companies are used to this. Again, we're not the first community to go about this way.
No, I understand. Do we
Great.
want to maybe just highlight that change? Because Henniker has got a history of always issuing certificate of occupancy.
We can. One of the things that we should note is because we had never adopted RSA 67451, legally we never should have been issuing certificate of occupancies.
I get that. I understand that.
So we can definitely highlight that.
Okay. I remember we had the little issue with the solar panels and how to get the tax benefits, and it was cart before the horse, and people didn't understand it, and it led to a little bit of a quagmire. And so just want to highlight that policy change that we don't do the CO.
And we've already started drafting, because we have people who have already come in, because we're kind of in that limbo. We have provided them a letter stating that we don't issue COs, and they have had no issues come back to us yet. So.
Okay, further questions from the board?
So Joe, say I'm gonna redo my kitchen or something else, can you just
Sure.
walk through certain applications where I would not have to get a permit on this?
So if you are doing your kitchen, let's say, and you're not adding any square footage to your property, you would not need a zoning permit for that. There would be no permit pulled. A permit would be pulled if you're adding an addition that is adding square footage. If you're adding a garage, if you're adding a deck, if you're adding a dormer, things like that, the square footage change is what would trigger it. If you're redoing a bathroom and you're not adding, let's say, a bathroom, because adding a bathroom would come in depending on if you're on a septic, things like that, septic plans would come into play. But if you're just redoing a kitchen, there'd be no zoning permit that you'd have to do. You would have to do nothing.
So if I'm replacing a deck, I would not have to get one.
If you're replacing a deck,
if it's not changing
if you're
the
not
footprint.
correct, if you're not changing the footprint, you would not be required to have a permit.
Do we have permits though for plumbing and electricity?
We have had permits for plumbing and electricity. We would not have them anymore.
Not anymore.
This would do away with it.
Correct, because again, we have no enforcement mechanism to enforce those either. The electrical code does give an enforcement mechanism that in the event anybody needed to get an inspection for the electrical code, the NEC 2017 edition allows you to have a third party come in and inspect. And so people who are doing electrical upgrades still have that option through the NEC, the National Electrical Code.
And the state still has the right to go through and inspect.
The state does. And it's important to say, this doesn't mean we're going to be stopping any life safety inspections. Life safety will still continue on because NFPA 101 and NFPA 1 have been adopted by the town. And so the fire department will still be moving forward with any life safety inspections that are required.
And for commercial buildings?
Commercial buildings, the fire department would go through. And in the event you needed somebody to go through on the building side, the fire marshal's office can handle commercial buildings.
With electric and plumbing?
Correct.
Yes.
I'd like to ask a question.
Peter?
Yes, Joe, that's a good point, commercial buildings. So is it true that they don't need a building permit?
They would not need a building. A
I'm
commercial
sorry,
building.
let's say like college built the theater. Would they not have had to get a building permit now?
They would have had to get a zoning permit, and then they would have. The fire marshal's office would have been involved as far as because of the occupancy use.
Okay, that's the clarification I wanted.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the new zoning permit.
Well, hang on, it's a public hearing, so we got to allow
I try to move the meeting along.
we can't be North Korea on this, so if there's no other further commentary from the board right now, we would open it up for the public hearing aspect of it. Is there any audience members that wish to comment on the proposed zoning ordinance?
Yeah, and if you have a question or comment, you can type in the comments field and we can unmute you, or you can raise your hand under the participant list.
And I would be particularly interested, as Mr. Marco is a
Yes.
builder, if he could weigh in as to whether or not this is a positive change for the town.
Bill, I'm unmuting you.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, very good. I'm still confused on how this would work when it comes to building to code. For instance, Tia mentioned rebuilding a deck. If your deck is a certain height off the ground, you have to have safety railings. Safety railings are built to a certain standard. Who checks that out?
So currently, it's the understanding that as a builder, you have to build to the current code. That's the state building code has been passed, and that is the code of the law of the land, shall we say, as far as building codes go. In this situation, if you were building a deck, there's no building inspector, so the building inspector would not come out and inspect anything because we don't have that mechanism. We haven't adopted a mechanism to give the building inspector authority. To me, if the town wants to pursue that, that's something that has to be pursued through town meeting and through adoption of that RSA. But we shouldn't be moving forward with a system that legally we shouldn't be doing. We can't do because we haven't adopted an enforcement mechanism that allows us to do it. So maybe this is a temporary fix, and then if the board or if a town members want to come forward and we want to look at an actual building inspection process, I'm okay with that and looking at it. But for now, this is legally what we can do, which is why we're moving forward with it.
So it doesn't address actual building to code.
The understanding again is you have to build a code per the state law.
I'm sorry, Joe.
No.
I mean, one of the problems is those of us that adhere to code are often, or sometimes, maybe outbid by somebody who's, does not adhere to code. Because,
Sure.
building code, you got to get the proper materials and put the time and effort in to make sure that it's right. So you kind of sometimes feel at a disadvantage to somebody who might just be swinging by and throw something together that's not adequate. So I don't know how it helps the town out and local contractors out to go this way. I think it's more just of a legal technicality is what you're solving.
Well, and that's if we don't go forward with if we decided not to go forward with the zoning permit, we still would not be conducting any building inspections because we can't. So either way, there's no mechanism right now to ensure that somebody is building to code. This at least ensures that when somebody is building a house, let's say, or if they're putting on an addition, that we're at least making sure that they're conforming to our zoning, which is what the idea behind the zoning permit would be. Again, it's looking at setbacks, it's looking at uses. But if we didn't go forward with this, we still, like I said, we don't have that mechanism to be able to have a building inspector go out to ensure that you are building to code. And the only way we can get that mechanism is through town meeting and through the adoption of that RSA.
But so, Joe, even if the homeowner is voluntarily saying, I really want building inspections through this process, to protect themselves, especially if they have a mortgage or if there's any potential insurance implications, right, on what they're constructing, we can't even offer them a building inspection and have a building inspector on standby for a homeowner to voluntarily say, please come in and check.
We
The
cannot
bank or the insurance company can provide an inspector, and they very often do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tia, we can't because there would be because we don't have that enforcement mechanism. We don't have the municipality the immunity essentially if they were wrong, because we haven't adopted that. Currently, if we had adopted and the building inspector went out and he made an error and a house fell down, we have coverage under RSA. Because we haven't adopted the enforcement mechanism to have a building inspector, we don't get that coverage. If that makes sense.
I spent a few years working in New London back in the late 80s, and they had this old gentleman, a retired architect, came by every couple of weeks. And I never really quite understood why he was there. He was doing the inspection for the bank, for Crescenti's Market, which is now Hannaford's. That's how they do it. It's quite common. If the bank has to have it inspected. The bank will find the inspector for it.
So would it be safe to say that maybe we want to have a list of 3 or 4 private building inspectors that goes along with this permit and just say, feel free to call one of these folks if you.
No, that doesn't work. We don't have the
No.
authority.
I wouldn't support that.
Yeah, we don't have the authority.
One more question,
We have
please.
to adopt the code.
Go ahead, Bill.
You know, I do a lot of work in our neighbors down at Ware, and you know, that building inspector comes out and looks at my stuff every time. I guess this is a question for Joe. Does Ware, have they passed that RSA that you're talking about? Is their system completely different than ours?
They have. So that RSA, we don't have to pass anything to formally adopt the building code because the state's adopted it. They're telling you how you have to do it. We have to adopt the actual enforcement mechanism that it gives us the authority to have a building inspector, to issue a certificate of occupancies, and to go out and conduct the inspections. Until we adopt that RSA, we can't do any of that, and we never have.
Okay,
Okay,
I understand.
thank you. Is there
It's
anybody
not-
else from the public that go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say that Bill's response. It's not perfect by any means. You know, my background obviously is from code enforcement. I get the building inspection process and the need for it. You know, I think one of the major things, if we're going to look down the road and revisiting this adoption, is insurance rates are going to change in the town of Henniker because we don't offer building inspecting, and
Yes.
that's something we have to think about. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but it will start to impact us if we don't look forward to adopting that RSA to have that enforcement mechanism.
Right.
Well, it also protects the builders too, to have the building inspection process, because the good ones follow the code. It's the bad ones who, you know, come into town and don't follow the code that then impact our current builders in the area. So
Even more dangerous.
It also protects the homeowner.
yes,
Well, what I was going to say was, it's even more dangerous than some of the stuff that homeowners do themselves.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're technically in the public session, so is there anybody else from the audience that wishes to make a comment on this?
I'm not seeing anybody with their hands up or anything in the comments.
Anything in the group chat?
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. Seeing no other commentary, we'll close down the public commentary and we will return to board deliberations. Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes, I'm going to go back and make the motion again
Peter, go ahead.
to adopt the zoning permit process as explained by the town administrator.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second
And
it.
waive the third reading.
What do you want to do about the third reading? You want to keep it or
I'm
waive it?
sorry, I should go back to my motion. And I neglected, I forgot about the third reading. I'd like to make the same motion and add to it and waive the third reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Peter that was seconded by Scott. Further discussion on the motion. Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Joe, great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Amazing work, Joe.
All right. Item number 21. Request for board approval of temporary policy on public meetings. Joe.
I presented this last week. Again, this just kind of governs what we're doing. It acknowledges the governor's executive emergency orders 12 and 16 that talk about not allowing gatherings of more than 10 people and allowing a public body to meet like this. So again, this is a policy that would be temporary just to govern ourselves while we're in this unique situation.
Great. Board deliberations. Not hearing any. We need to open this up for public input as well, right?
I don't know if do you think, yeah,
It's a
we
second
can.
reading.
It's
Sure,
public
yeah.
discussion on a second reading, yeah.
Discussion on the
Yeah.
second reading, yeah.
Okay, at this point in time, the board will shut down deliberations and we'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to address this policy?
I'm not
Don't be
seeing
shy.
anybody.
Don't be shy. I see all those faces out there. All right, not hearing any, we will close down the public deliberation and return to the board deliberations. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Leon. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Tia. Further discussion? Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Great. Item number 22, acceptance of Board of Selectmen public hearing minutes, February 10, 2020. Is
I make a motion to approve.
there a second?
Straighten out, before you do that, we gotta straighten out the paragraph on the first page that starts with Selectman Parker. The last line of that, I was misidentified in the paper, and all of the quotes attributed to me were from Bruce Travellini. And on page, what is it, third page, on the public comment, Jerry Gilbert stationed that the water something, it should be department.
Further comments on the February 10th minutes? I'll entertain a motion with those edits.
So move.
Moved by Leon, seconded by
I'll second.
Tia. Thank you. Roll call vote. Yes, Chris Blombeck.
Yes,
Tia
Peter
Hooper.
Flynn.
Tia.
Yes.
Scott abstained, wasn't there.
Leon Parker, yes.
Okay. Motion carries 4-0. Acceptance of board, one abstention on that. Acceptance of Board of Selectmen non-public minutes, March 3rd, 2020.
Which item number? There's a few of them.
23.
23.
So is this item 12?
12, yeah, there's a
Yes.
12 and a 13.
Yeah.
Yes, item 12.
So
Sorry, my bad.
I'll make a motion to approve non-public minutes from March 3rd, item 12.
Is there a second?
The item 4, Davison Road update, looking at a trial, not a trail.
Okey-doke, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to add on to the motion that we seal the minutes.
Okay. Did anybody second that?
Yep.
Okay. Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Okay. Acceptance of board minutes, item 13, non-public,
Yep,
March 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the non-public minutes from March 3rd, item 13, and I will also make a motion to seal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
All right. Public minutes of Tuesday, March 17th.
Looks like there's non-public on here. These are non-public.
Oh, my bad, my bad.
So-
Non-public.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the Tuesday, March 17th non-public minutes, and I will also make a motion to seal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Leon. Roll call vote. Chris Blombeck, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon
Okay.
Parker, yes.
Board of Selectmen minutes, March 26th. This was the one down at the community center.
Yes, Chris, I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 26th.
Second.
Seconded by Peter. Roll call vote. Yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Oh, these roll call votes are a pain in the ass. Okay. Public minutes, Tuesday, April 21.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 21st.
A second.
Second,
Roll call vote. Chris Blomberg, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes. Peter?
Peter Flynn. Yep, sorry.
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
All right, and what do we got? What, non-public, April 21?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the non-public minutes from April 21st.
You wish to
Second.
seal?
And I make a motion to seal.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Roll call vote. Chris Blomberg, yes.
Tia Hooper, yes.
Peter Flynn, yes.
Scott?
Scott Osgood, yes.
Leon Parker, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So
Joe.
just on, so
Oh,
I
go ahead.
just have a quick, so just on the minutes, they seem to be getting longer and longer and longer. I know we've had this discussion in the past previous to Joe's arrival. If there's any way we can condense these minutes down a little bit, some of the discussion doesn't have to be illuminated if, it's not meaningful. So if we can squish them a little bit and keep the important stuff, but if it's not important.
It's important to note that because these are being recorded as well, and
Right.
the information's out there, that we don't need to get into the finite detail of everything.
Correct.
Agreed. Makes your
Okay.
job a little easier, Kelly. You're muted, but we love you. So, town administrators reports, Joe.
Sure, I'll go as quick as I can because I know we're getting late here. I just wanted to update everybody. The Emergent Leader Program through Primex has been put off till 2021 due to everything that's going on. They are doing some virtual classes in the meantime, but I just wanted to let everybody know about that. I received a phone call from the census. Henniker is running behind most of the surrounding communities around us and below the state average as far as response rates go. So I just put a plea out there to all the citizens to please try to go to census.org, fill out your census. As of this morning, we were at about 55%. The state average is about 58. Our surrounding communities are all up around 65 to 70% reporting now. So if we can try to get that up, the census is obviously important because that's how our populations is tabulated, and that's how a lot of our funding and things like that come in based off of that. So it's really important that we get that information out there. Memorial Day Parade, this is something I wanted to talk to the board about. I received an email from Jim Morse from the Patriotic Committee as far as the possibility of canceling it. It is his opinion and mine that the board should look at probably canceling the Memorial Day Parade. He would like to continue on, though, and put the flags on the veterans' headstones on Thursday and do a rifle memorial at the ceremony on Memorial Day at the cemetery.
Yeah, and I had emailed you about this, Joe, and I really think with the current situation and the stay-at-home order being extended, we need to sadly postpone it or cancel it.
So.
Very good.
Just another quick update. We're still doing the virtual town hall meetings. We did 2 more today. We had one on the education side. We had Jackie Coe from the SAU, the superintendent, and Matt Colby joined us. And then we had a couple representatives from NEC as well, just to speak about the current state of the education, what it looks like maybe in the fall with them going back, things like that. It was a great discussion. That's up on the website now if people want to watch that discussion to see what happened. I have a note from the highway department that I wanted to discuss. Obviously with budgets right now and a lot that's going on, the highway department is trying to figure out where we can expend and what we can't expend. I mean, there's 5 things specifically he's looking at to try to get some guidance on how we want to move forward. And that's the line striping, the crushed stone, the crack sealing, the roadside mowing, and then paving bids.
Joe, since this was all in his operating budget, I'm going to say that he should be moving forward on this. Our roads, we let 30 years go by and they really haven't gotten the attention that they deserve and that is needed, especially with the roadside mowing. Every time that we don't do it, it ends up costing us more and it takes more time. So I say that we need to push forward on that.
So roadside mowing was not in our 2019 budget?
It should be part of his operating package.
Well, if we're looking again in the 2020 budget, we've called out specifically roadside mowing. So that's what I'm going off of. So if you want to put it into the operating package, but it's not spoken to, it's spoken to in the 2020 budget.
Well, we did stuff, I believe, in 2019 as well. So
Okay.
I don't know where that came from, but I think we need to move all these light items. You know, these were part of the operating plan.
I agree with Tia, the roads should keep moving forward, especially a lot of those seem like pretty low cost items in the grand scheme.
Yeah, I think, you know, the biggest one obviously is the crack ceiling at $90,000. That's the large one. Roadside mowings at 20. The paving bids, obviously that's out of his operating budget as well if we want to move forward with any of the paving bids. I think, and speaking to Leo, he's specifically looking at least to move on Patterson Hill from what he told me. So.
Right. Well, we also have.
Asphalt's cheap.
Right, exactly. And we also have money in the capital reserve fund as well. But, you know, crack sealing, that's our first line of defense when it comes to the first phase of repairing a road. It's actually cheaper to do the crack sealing than to let it go and then to totally have to do a shim and overlay or to reclaim it. So I think we need to move forward on all of these items.
That works.
I agree with Tia's thinking.
Perfect.
The cost of not doing some of this stuff gets really multiplied in following years. And the amount that we've gotten done in the last couple of years, I think we need to keep chugging along in the same manner. So I'm with Thea and Chris.
And then just finally, as an update to everybody, the primary and general elections are going to be able to be done through absentee ballot. So that information is up on the website if anybody has any questions. So if they don't want to actually come out to the polling places, there is no requirement for them to have to be away or anything like that as typical for an absentee ballot. So.
Very good. Anything else, Joe?
That is what I have.
Excellent. Any selectmen reports out there? Peter?
Yes, I may have touched slightly on the athletic report last month, because it was the last meeting. They had a meeting the 20th, and I think we met the 21st. They actually, some specific things, the soccer program, they're still having signups June 1 to July 8th at this time. They're not opening up the field, putting up all the goalposts and all that stuff, goals and all that at this time. The swimming program has been canceled for the summer. Photo session for baseball and softball obviously canceled because those league operations are on hold, and the only hope they have now is they'd have a late season, maybe in July or something, but photos are out of it now, obviously. So they'll keep us informed on that. So that's pretty much it.
Okay. Anybody else for selectmen's reports?
Well, it's not selectman report, but I just want to make a mention. The Henniker Lions Club, we are starting up our garden once again that supports the Henniker Food Pantry. So with social distancing practices in place, we will be continuing that project to assist our community.
Great.
I'll follow up on that too. The Rotary Club went down to the Rotary Park down there right down the street from the Lions Garden to just refresh the place. Also, too, in Azalea Park, you know, there's some issues going on. We had a meeting down there about the beavers, you know, that are really chewing into the trees. That's a big problem down there. Plus, there was some fence damage. So we're looking for the right opportunity to get this stuff fixed.
Scott, you might want to touch base with Fish and Game about the beaver. They can probably assist you.
Yeah.
That's what I was just going to say. They can trap them. One of the questions, I've had a couple of members of the Road Management Committee suggest that we ought to have a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Can we set up a virtual meeting like this without bending anybody's nose?
Yeah, I think you can. If you let me know, I'll post it and get it all ready to go for you.
I'll work it out and give you a date, and we'll go
Perfect.
from there. Joe, quick question. Whatever happened to the 6 Pike Street violation? Is that resolved? Does the guy move the building, or are you still fighting with it?
That's actually going to be a non-public tonight.
Okay.
Joe, I did have a call over the weekend, once again regarding the dumpsters overflowing.
Okay.
So we
Yeah.
have to keep an eye on that.
I will speak to the health officer and get on that.
Further selectmen reports.
Noticed
Scott,
too.
No, nothing.
Leon,
Nothing else.
Tia,
Nope.
Peter.
I said it.
Okay. At this point in time, it's time for public commentary number 2. Is there any audience members out there in Zoom land that wish to address the board on any issues that we did not touch upon today? Please signify by either texting or raising your hand and we'll acknowledge you. Okay, we got one down. We have
Is that
Allison.
Allison?
Yep.
Yep.
Go ahead, Allison.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I have emailed Leo a couple times, and I'm not sure if maybe Joe about fixing the drainage that's running down my driveway and routing out the backyard to the river since repaving Ramsdale 2 years ago. And I'm wondering if they have some leftover, like if it's a matter of just putting like a bump in front of our third driveway with the tar or whatever they're using now.
Why don't you say the ad where you're talking about, Allison? I don't think everybody knows.
The Henniker House, bed and breakfast.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, when they repaved Ramsdale Road 2 years ago, the grading changed and the drainage basically from, I'm not sure, Peter Flynn's house down is all going down our backyard into the river. And it's routed out all my lawn and the stones, and there's a big ditch now where the water runs down. And I think it's just a matter of putting a bump or something in front of the driveway to get the water to go to the drain, which is in front of the next house.
Okay.
Because it's
All
getting really ugly. There's like big rocks showing now because all the earth is gone.
Joe, is that something you could have Leo take a look at?
I can definitely follow up with Leo on it. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Anybody else for public comment?
Heidi O'Coin has comment.
Let's go Heidi first, then Joan. Go ahead, Heidi.
I can certainly email you what I'm going to say, but I was reviewing the tax lien list, and one especially jumped out at me for J&M Trucking on Newton Road. It seemed quite excessive, the amount due in 2019. So I pulled the assessment record, and if you do the tax calculation, it's double what it should be. So I pulled the tax bill. And then in reviewing several others on that list, the taxes listed in that column are not matching the tax bills. I only say that to say maybe the Excel sheet is skewed. I don't know where the numbers came from, but if you're trying to rely on this list for an amount of unpaid taxes, I think that it should be verified against something to make sure that you're working off of accurate numbers. And please understand, I work with taxes, real estate, calculations of those things, assessments. So that's why I think that it jumped out at me as a flag. So just a comment, and I could email you the list of the ones that I verified through the tax bills that they're not correct on that list.
Could you email that to the board and directly to Joe as well?
Right, and again, I didn't check every one on the list, just the ones that seem to look kind of off.
Great. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Okay, and Joan.
Just quickly, you mentioned fish and game for the beavers. I talked to the conservation officer today about it, and because they're really doing damage to those trees down there like you wouldn't believe. But he doesn't seem too favorable that you really can't trap them or kill them or anything like that. There's just too many of them. They're all up and down the river. But anyway, we're working with Fish and Game just to learn more about it. We might have to put wire around some of the important trees. There's some sassafras trees down there and stuff, but we're learning about it. But so I don't think you can go killing any of those beavers down there. They're smarter than we are. Thank you.
Go. Thank you, Joan. Anybody else for public comment? Joe, you got anybody?
I've got nobody.
Tia?
Nope.
Okay, we will close down public comment and we will go into item number 29, which is non-public RSA 91A:3, Roman numeral 2. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight's Zoom meeting, and we appreciate you participating.
Joe, can you send me the link to the other Zoom?
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.